Welcome to the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast, a podcast featuring interviews with equestrian authors who love all things horses and writing about them. In each episode, you'll hear inspirational stories from horsebook authors, including writing advice and marketing tips to help you write your very own horsebook. If you're an author, aspire to be an author, or simply love horsebooks, then you are in the right place. I'm your host, Kade, and creative writing makes my spurs jingle. Hi everyone, welcome to the Equestrian Author Spotlight. Today I am so excited to have Raquel Lynn of Horses and Heels and Stable Style fame on the show today. Hi Raquel.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you. So to kick things off, I'm going to read your bio and then we'll hop into the fun stuff or gallop into the fun stuff, which is obviously the interview questions. And Raquel has her buddy Mango back there hanging out during the interview. So he's going to make some appearances.
Yes, Mango's here.
Yay, Mango. He's famous all in his own right too. We're going to talk a little bit more about Mango here as we get started. So Raquel lives in an equestrian community just outside the hustle and bustle of Los Angeles with her paint mare Fira in her backyard. When she's not riding through the hills, she's sharing barn tours on Stable Style or posting inspiration on Horses and Heels. Raquel Lynn created her dream job one blog post at a time on her website, Horses and Heels. With a knack for interior decorating, beautiful photographs, and inventive recipes, Raquel has garnered thousands of fans over the years. Horses and Heels.com stable style category grew so popular, Raquel launched a sister website, stablestyle.net, focusing on barn tours and tack rooms. Stable Style draws an international audience of horse lovers eager to peruse barns ranging from quaint two-style stables to luxury equestrian estates. And that is so true. I love following Stable Style, and we're going to talk about, the evolution of Horses and Heels and then the creation of Stable Style as we get going. But
Awesome.
Raquel, I'm so happy to have you on the show, and I thought a very appropriate way to start would be to talk about how your love affair with horses began.
Okay, so I guess I was that lucky girl who grew up on a farm and had a pony. I grew up in Ohio on a 400-acre dairy farm, so I had a little Shetland pony named Lightning. That was my first, love, and I basically, I have great childhood memories of just running around the farm with him, like playing dress up and riding in like tutus and just like trying to make him be like my little like trick pony and just doing all kinds of, I was always riding bareback. Like I never wanted to put a saddle on. My sister would always try and be like, you need to put on a saddle. And I'd be like, oh no, like we're going to go bareback. So I think just at that young age, I was just a girl hanging out with her pony. And then as time progressed throughout the years, my parents put me in 4-H. Lightning, he passed because he was very, very old. So then I got, another pony that was kind of, a step up pony. And I did almost every discipline in 4-H and, showed. And I think that it was just horses from, the moment that I was born until, just going on into adulthood.
That's right. I think we're actually born with it, with horses in our genes. I know I was the same way. I wasn't lucky enough to grow up on a farm, but I loved horses ever since I was a little girl, and my parents always thought I'd grow out of it, but here I am. I'm still loving horses.
Yeah.
So, in 4-H, you mentioned 4-H too. I grew up in the 4-H program, and I think it is such a wonderful program for young people to just be involved in the community and be involved with animals, particularly the horse sector. But there's also arts and crafts and a whole lot of fun things to do. Did you have like the 4-H fair in Ohio where you grew up? Did you have one of those too for your county?
We did. And honestly, like from elementary school through high school, that was like the highlight of every year for me. It was, getting to show my horse at the fair. As I got older, there were the boys, when I became a teenager, I was like, oh, like want to impress so-and-so at the fair. So I have very fond memories of just showing, I did so many classes. I did everything, from English to Western to barrel racing to versatility, all that stuff. So I loved 4-H.
It was so great. And I was always so sad when the fair was over. And you know, you're totally cracking me up, because it sounds like a page from my history, because you know, we met boys there, you know. It's like it was always like the dairy or the cattle barn boys, and then the horse girls.
Yeah, no, I think that's classic. Just like a small town like thing, that was just like our highlight. And then school always started for us after the fair. Like our school, you know, some schools started before the fair, but we didn't have to go back until after the fair. And we always thought that was really cool, that, you know, we were special. So
that's so awesome. I love that you're involved in 4-H, and we can share that memory a little bit. It was such good times, such innocent times, you know, and horses were the pinnacle of the whole. I love that. So you are still a horse lover, obviously. And I am curious about, you know, I know personally about your heart horse that you have now, because I follow all your adventures on social media, and I love watching where you ride and what you're up to with her. Can you tell us a little bit about the horse that has your heart now?
So Fira is a registered paint. She's 5 years old, and she came to me from Texas about a little over 2 years ago. And you know, it was a long search to find her. When I got her, she wasn't broke. And she was just she was going to be my project horse. That was my intention for her. I wanted a paint, I wanted a mare, you know, I wanted a certain age, I wanted a certain bloodline. And then of course you throw a budget on top of all of that. And, you know, it was hard to find her. And she came, and she was really underweight when I got her, which it kind of worked to my advantage, I think, in some ways, because she was very quiet when she first got here. And I was like, okay, I'm bringing this horse from Texas into the city. I was really, you know, unsure. You know, the first time I remember leading her out of her stall, and, you know, as soon as she goes out her stall, like she's in the alley, we're in like the street, and I'm just like, okay. I remember telling my husband, like, I don't know what's going to happen right now. I don't know what she's going to do, you know, just like stay away from us, like, you know, in case she explodes or freaks out. And I led her around the neighborhood, like 1 block, and she was just, you know, mellow and quiet, which was great. And she seemed really sweet. But I think as she got, you know, as I began to feed her more, she started to get a little sassy, and then she started to get more of that personality, which I love. But it's definitely been, I think, a big challenge with her. She's great, and I've definitely learned a lot with her, but she can definitely, you know, she has her moments. Because if you do follow me on Instagram, people are always like, oh, she looks like she's so well behaved and so perfect. And I'm like, well, you know, I only post the photos where she's behaving. But, you know, that being said, she's only 5 years old, and she, you know, goes down the street. She's traffic safe. You know, there's so many things around here. Every day is like, you know, it's different. You don't know what you're going to run into, even just on the way out to the trail. So, I really like her. I'm just kind of, you know, always bonding with her. One of the things we're doing right now is I'm teaching her some tricks. So that's been kind of fun. And I do lots of rides with friends and stuff, and very social. So yeah, Fira she's a big part of my life.
Yeah. And it sounds like you're both learning together and actually adapting really well to city life together. And I love following your adventures. And I have a mare, you know, my mare Sissy too. They always have their moments, and I'm quite the same. Like I post the nice stuff, and you know, sometimes they're naughty. And then for listeners that don't know, can you talk a little bit about where, you know, you're not on a farm, you live in the city. Can you talk just briefly? I know you have a blog post on your website that details Fira's living conditions, and she's very well taken care of. But can you talk a little bit about what it's like to live in the city with a horse? Obviously, you were talking about, you know, just riding out to the trails. You don't know what's going to happen. A garbage truck can go by, or some kid can go whizzing by on a bike. And for a flight animal, and you know, adapting to that is pretty extreme and new. How has it been for you having her in the city?
I mean, I think it's been a great adjustment for both of us. The advantage, I think, it being that she was young when she got here. for me, obviously I came from Ohio, so California living has been a culture shock, especially being here in Los Angeles. For, those of you who don't know, where I live right now is a 20-minute drive from, Hollywood, 20 minutes from downtown. Like from my backyard, I can see the back of the Hollywood sign. So we're in the heart of the city, but I live in what's called the Riverside Rancho, which is basically an equestrian community. I'm technically, my neighborhood is called Glendale, but it's Glendale and Burbank that are both, they're rancho friendly, meaning they're horse communities, and they've been here for a very long time, since the beginning. So our backyards are basically zoned for horses. So my backyard's zoned to have 2 horses. And Fira has basically, it's a 25 by 30, I just call it her stall, but it's, it has, it's a pipe corral that has essentially like the back half of it is covered, and she just has a shelter. The weather being so mild here in California, you don't really need a traditional stall. It's got it's basically a giant shed. And then the back half is covered, and, there's mats and stuff. And Fira has set up her zones. She has her eating zone, her sleeping zone, and she's nice enough to have her bathroom zone. So stall cleaning is really easy for me. So that's kind of like our little backyard setup. I have an 8x8 shed, which is really tiny. So I keep tack and hay in there. Everyone asks me, what do I do with my manure? I get 2 trash cans from the city, and I keep those next to her stall. I fill them up every week, and then I wheel them up out to the alley, and they dispose of them. So that part is actually really easy. And then as far as, getting hay and stuff, I can't fit a lot of that, but I'm lucky because there's a bunch of local feed stores that they always offer like free delivery or delivery for $2 or something like that. So basically whenever I need hay, I'll just call up, the store, and I can get anything I want, delivered. So that's really nice.
That's really, really incredible. And I think people would be surprised to learn that there's such a horse-friendly community so close to LA. And it's really neat to know. I know for me, I'm from Michigan, you're from Ohio, as a Midwesterner, when I came out west to Arizona, what you described is very similar to kind of how the zoning in the horse world works out here. I was surprised. I was like, where are the wood stalls, like the enclosed stalls, like everything's piping, but it's hot here. So there needs to be airflow, and, all they need is light shelter because the weather is so mild, like you said. And I have the same situation. I put my manure in a trash can and roll it out to the curb, and they come and pick it up. And I'm in a horse community too. So it's different than the Midwest, but so great to be able to have our horses in our own backyard so close to these major cities. So that's so exciting. And I know that was something that you dreamed up for a very long time, and now you have it right there. Any thoughts about a second horse?
I mean, people ask me all the time. Time-wise, I mean, I would love to, but even before finances, which it would be, financially, I don't think I'm ready to make that commitment. But even if, say, all the money was there and it was like, okay, money was no object, I can just have whatever horse I want right now, I don't have the time to give to a second horse. Because what people don't realize is, city life maintenance on a horse is a lot different than, my friends who live in Ohio. If they don't ride their horse for 1 or 2 weeks, like, that's fine. Their horse has pasture, and they can just run around and be wild. And I know people like that, they don't go out to the barn for a couple of weeks, or, they're not very active in their horse's life. With Fira having a smaller, enclosed space, it's very essential that I get her out every day. Some days I don't. Maybe she gets out 5 or 6 days a week, but she has enough room in her stall where she can, and she will run around and buck. I've seen her do it. Like, if she's mad about dinner not being served on time, she'll run around and buck, and she'll look at the house like, I know you're in there. but I try and get her out frequently, and I try and vary what she does. So, some days we just hand walk and we'll walk around the neighborhood. Some days we have public arenas for turnout. So I'll, just take her there to turn her out. Some days I do arena work, some days I do hills and trails. So I vary all of that. That being said, with a second horse, I could pony them or do whatever, but I just feel like at this point, I'm so busy that I don't think it would be fair to her or the second horse, because I would be splitting the same amount of time in between two. But maybe, just maybe, a mini pony. I would love to get a mini at some point. And obviously I wouldn't have to ride, I could just do more turnout and stuff with that, but down the line for sure.
And that's really responsible. That's responsible horse ownership. And that's really smart to think that way. But then a mini pony, think of all the fun you could have on social media with that. Oh my goodness. Yes. I can only imagine that would be fun. So it really makes my spurs jingle to be talking to a cowgirl, because I'm a cowgirl, and that makes me happy. And you love paint horses just like me, and you ride Western, and you adore cowboy boots. Tell us why, you grew up riding a lot of different disciplines. Tell us why Western is your discipline of choice.
So yeah, growing up, I did kind of a little bit of everything, and I did have fun with it, but I think barrel racing, and Western just kind of always, it drew me in because, it's a speed event. I've always liked a lot of the tack, or, I always thought like the barrel racers, I'm like, oh, they're so cool. Growing up, of course, I thought that. And then, I like that it's a sport where, you're judged by the clock. So you're not judged by, say how much money you have, or, literally a judge who might have certain bias towards certain horses or stuff like that. So I've always kind of, that I guess has been like a big appeal to me. And then it's just, it's fun. It's not too serious. I feel like you can still do other things, there's trail riding and stuff like that. I think it's good for a barrel horse to obviously get out on the trails and not just do arena work all the time. So I think that I've just kind of always, I think there's something really sleek and pretty about English. And I do like a lot of English, like maybe like home decor and stuff like that. And I always say if I had to do English, I would be like a jumper or something like that. But Western just, I don't know. Something about the lifestyle has just always had my heart.
I love that. And I totally agree. Do you have your sights set on any competition as far as barrel racing goes? Or are you just practicing? Like what's in the future for just, for that with you and Fira?
Yeah. So for 2020, definitely some shows. I haven't been really training her or starting her on the pattern that much, just because of, my own excuses in my head, which are just, they're excuses. But for 2020, one of my goals is to go ahead and do one show a month. I think if I do start barrel racing again, it's not going to be at like the same capacity that I did when I was younger. Like, I'd go to one or two in a weekend, and like, that was very exhausting. Now that I'm older and have so much going on, I do want to show again. But it's going to be a slower process. And then also part of that with where I live right now, I don't have a truck and trailer, but I don't want to give it away, but I see that changing in the future. So, for 2020, Fira and I will definitely be getting out a little more. Let's just say that.
Well, that's so exciting. I can't wait to follow your journey there. And I think your goals are perfect and realistic. I mean, that's the cool thing about being an adult is you can decide, what pace you want to go at and do what works for you, where you feel comfortable in the decisions you're making. So that's also really responsible.
Yeah.
So on a little bit of a different topic, I really wanted to just address this and get your perspective, because, it's been so heartbreaking for me watching the news. I know I reached out to you and I sent you an email checking in to make sure you and Fira were okay about, there's been so many wildfires in California. And I was just, I kind of wanted to get your perspective. What has it been like being a horse owner during this scary time? And what kind of impacts has there been on the horse community?
For me, I'm very lucky because, like I told you, I'm in a very safe area. So I'm very close to the city, even though we're surrounded by like mountains. So for the most part, when these fires are happening, I feel very fortunate because I don't have to panic. Um, but that being said, I know a lot of people who live in these communities, and I know what they're going through. We have a Southern California emergency evacuation Facebook group where basically, what happens is when these fires break out, like equestrians they'll start a thread and just say like, they have staging areas for where we're going to go, like pick up horses. You'll say like, I have a 2-horse trailer. I have a 4-horse trailer. Like I can come here. They'll say we have, 120 horses that need evacuated. So it's very, it's organized in that way. And it's really, even though it's devastating to see these fires, it's nice to see the community, like people will help everyone out. So it's been nice to just see like that sort of thing. But then, you see all these little news clips and stuff, and it's horrible because sometimes when the fires happen, they happen really quickly and you've got to evacuate. I've learned from like several friends, and they've been really lucky where they evacuated early and everyone kind of thought that they were being dramatic and they thought they were getting out too soon. But then the one's friend or her barn is completely gone. So she was really happy that the trainer, at like 6 a.m. was like, we're getting the horses out of there. And everyone's like, why are you evacuating? And sure enough, that barn was gone within a couple hours. And then another friend that I know, it was evening time and there was a fire that started, it wasn't close to them at the moment, but she told her husband, she's like, we're leaving. And her husband was just like, it's not convenient to evacuate. So he kind of was rolling his eyes the entire time while, they got out and they're safe. And the fire did come basically back to their property line. And so like there were singe marks essentially at the back ends of the pastures. And they're really lucky because, they kept their home and everything. But I think that, when it comes to these fires, I think you just have to be really aware and you have to have a plan, because nothing really goes as planned. Like even if you have one, you're not going to be sticking with that plan. And I think you just need to get out for sure, because then you hear about the other sad stories where people are just turning,
That was Mingo.
Yeah. You don't want to be opening the doors to your horse's stalls and, they'll probably fend for themselves and they'll probably be okay, but you don't want to be in that position where you have to just open your stall doors and hope for the best.
Yeah. It's must be, but it's better safe than sorry for sure. And, and thank you for sharing with us about kind of such a difficult conversation to talk about. And, I was wondering, are people doing anything like microchipping, or I know some people like braid the names and phone numbers into their hair or anything. Have you taken any precautionary measures just in case, or
So Fira isn't microchipped, but I think the next time the vet comes out, I'll have it done. My thoughts on that in general, it's good to have done, but what I've seen even in like these fire situations is you'll see people looking for their horses afterwards. Not everyone has access to read a microchip, or that's not the first thing they're doing to identify a horse, So there are, specific Facebook groups for helping people find their horses. And there's a lot of groups that I'm involved in where they'll share, cross post because, people will rescue other people's horses and they're at work, so they don't know where they get taken to. So as far as like braiding it into the mane, like that's super important, or having some form of ID on, a leather halter. They recommend that you do not do a nylon halter or, a rope halter, but, if you can have a tag on them, or, definitely the braided in the mane is great. I've seen, where sometimes people will mark or write a phone number on the horse, or, one of the anklet like bands basically. So there's a bunch of different ways that you can do it.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think what I love so much about this conversation in particular is just, that's what I love about the equestrian community. When there's, when there's anything going on, we all band together and support each other. And that makes me happy to be a horse owner. And obviously you're experiencing that during these fires. So on a lighter note, I've always wanted to ask you this question. How many pairs of cowgirl boots do you own?
Oh my gosh. I don't know because I still haven't counted, but I feel like it's kind of a revolving door. More enter and then some exit, occasionally. I'd say I have 15 to 20 pairs. Because I know I have at least 5 pairs in the barn right now. I have a very small house, so I have to scatter them about. So I have to have my designated barn boots that they stay out there. And then I have, ones in the closet, a couple shelves that have some boots on them. So yeah, I think it's probably 15-ish.
That's awesome. And never too many pairs of cowboy boots, right?
Nope, never too many.
Yeah, I'm always drooling over something that you've posted on Horses and Heels when it comes to cowgirl boots. I know I've probably purchased several that you've recommended.
That's good.
And so Mango's made a couple of appearances as we've been talking today. I'd love to hear a little bit more about Mango and Mango's story. Can you tell us a little bit about Mango?
Yeah, so she actually, she's sleeping right here on the pillow behind me. I don't know if you can tell. It probably just looks like a pile of fur. She will be 8 in December. I've had her basically since she was a baby. She came with me from Ohio and has been with me through many, many moves. And, she's basically my sidekick. I mean, her being here with me, this is how we spend our days. If I'm in my office, she's in her little teepee, like at my feet. She goes everywhere. And, California is so dog friendly. So my husband and I were just at breakfast this morning. Of course, Mango came with, she goes sometimes with me to parties, and Adam will just be like, I get kind of anxious about meeting new people at parties, and especially when we're going to like music events for him. Mm-hmm. So he knows I get like a little bit of, anxiety, and he'll be like, just bring the dog. She's a great icebreaker for the party. So we brought her to somebody's engagement party last weekend, and she was the star. So she's basically like my little furry assistant who's always with me, and kind of, I take her everywhere with me. And she's also very well behaved. She travels very well. She flies with me on the plane. She has a little stroller. She goes everywhere with me. So I love her.
Oh, she's fantastic. And what would we do without our furry companions? I tell you, they bring us so much joy, so much love, so much peace. My dogs are the same way. They hang out with me. I can't take them everywhere, unfortunately, but they hang out with me all day while I'm working and writing, and life wouldn't be the same without them. So thanks for sharing about her with us. So I wanted to move a little bit more into like the informational part of the interview, and I'd really like to hear you describe, Horses and Heels and Stable Style, and what people can find on your very, very popular equestrian blogs.
Okay, so Horses and Heels is basically my lifestyle blog. It involves everything from cowboy boots to recipes to home decor finds and DIYs. I do try and rotate, my subjects and my content to try and make sure that I'm a pretty, have a broad range of topics. It's, there's a lot going on, which I sometimes feel like it's a good thing. And then also sometimes I feel like it hinders me a little bit, the site that it is, which I'll just do a little quick segue into Stable Style and how that came to be about. So I have a second blog called Stable Style, which if the title doesn't tell you, it's all about barns. And back when I had Horses and Heels, I I have categories. So I created a category called stable style. And I was like, oh, it'd be fun to do some barn content occasionally on horses and heels. Well, I did, a few posts and they were really popular, and I saw that people really liked them. And I wanted to, 1 week I was like, oh, I just want to do like a bunch of barn tours. But I was like, but your horses and heels, like your readers, you need to have that variety that I like mentioned. So I was like, what if there was a second blog? So basically that was how the idea or the spinoff came to be. So I remember I created the Instagram account first because I was like, oh, the handle's available. So I grabbed the Instagram and, started planning that. And I launched Stable Style in 2016. I think the site was live in December of 2015, but then I didn't really start posting regularly until like the spring of the following year. So Stable Style is everything barn, from those, like I said, those cute little 2-stall barns to the luxury stables. And then I do mix in home decor and stuff like that as well, some lifestyle topics, because, they are popular. And what's fun about Stable Style is, my audiences on Horses and Heels versus Stable Style, they're a little different. You can follow, I have a lot of readers who obviously they follow Horses and Heels and they follow Stable Style, and that's great. But then I have a lot of new followers who just follow Stable Style and have no idea what Horses and Heels is. And that's okay too. Stable Style, if they just want the barns, that's great. That's what it's there for. And then Horses and Heels is nice because it's a little more personal. I get to share things like about Fira or, a special recipe, or, Mango, she makes appearances on the blog. We'll do dog content and stuff like that. So that being said, I really like having both blogs because it allows me to create a lot of different content. And then I feel like with Horses and Heels, I could kind of do whatever I want. Like, I make the rules. Obviously I make the rules with Stable Style too, but they're set to be, a certain way. It's not personal or anything like that. So yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. And, what I wanted to ask you is, so it's interesting that you manage 2 very popular equestrian lifestyle sites, and they have different subject matter. So has it been challenging to try, because I know I have a blog and I, work on my books and I'm doing this podcast now, and it takes a lot of time to create valuable content, content that your readers and followers are going to love. So have you found it difficult to manage the time around too, because they're both extraordinary and have a lot of information, and they both have huge followings, and it takes a lot. Has it been a challenge at all for you?
Definitely. The short answer is yes. And we could just stop with that. But going into detail, it's a give and take, and it's a balancing act. I've had to, even this year, I've cut back a little bit on some of my Horses and Heels content on the blog itself, where I've increased my amount of posting and blog posts on Stable Style, because in order for Stable Style to grow, I've needed to put a little more time into it. But my Horses and Heels followers, they're still happy because I have 2 newsletters. So I have my Horses and Heels newsletter, which everybody on Horses and Heels gets Stable Style as well. So they don't have to be on that second newsletter. Whereas Stable Style, like I said, it's kind of different. It has a different audience. Some people just follow it for itself. So then they get their Stable Style newsletter. So in terms of just balancing them both, I do feel like, especially this year, I've put Horses and Heels at a little bit of a backseat. I mean, not by any means am I going to stop or anything like that.
I was going to say, I haven't noticed it at all. It seems
well,
just
good.
Yeah, I haven't.
Good. That's the point. You're not supposed to notice that I've cut back in some ways, but with social media, there's so much going on with Instagram, and it's like, oh, you have to post this, you have to post that. And you know how it is. You constantly have to be putting new content out there, but I'm also good at recycling, at least on social media, on, my Facebook page, like holiday content, reposting old stuff that's still relevant or stuff that is like evergreen content. So yeah, it's a lot of work and it's hard and it's balancing, but I love it. You know what I mean? I love having both accounts because they both provide a different outlet.
And it's an awesome problem to have, you know, it's like too busy with two very successful sites, but then also fitting in time for your horse. I mean, you know, in a normal life, you know, it's like it's a big undertaking, and kudos to you for doing it so well and so beautifully. You know, it's like I said, I couldn't even tell that you might have slowed down just a little bit on Horses and Heels. And I love that you combine Horses and Heels into the Stable Style into the Horses and Heels newsletter. So I get that news too. So I do really appreciate that. And that was very smart to do it that way. Newsletters take a whole lot of energy too. So it's like, I really commend you for doing both and doing them well, which kind of makes me want to backpedal just a little bit, because I'm really curious, like, when did you realize that you wanted to combine your love of horses with blogging? Did you just all of a sudden decide, or were you like, I can do something like with this? Like, what made you decide to do that?
Yeah. So I've always been a creative person, and have always wanted to work in a creative industry. And to give you just a little bit of background, when I was deciding what I wanted to go to school for, what I wanted to do with my life, one of the things that I wanted to do was be an architect, which, if you know me, I'm so bad at math, that would have just never worked. Like, I used to read Architectural Digest as like a teenager. Like, I was obsessed with design and interiors, and I thought that stuff was really cool. So that was like a dream job, which I realized would never happen for me. And then the second thing that I actually wanted to do after graduating is I got into voiceover and thought I wanted to do like a radio show, like morning show drive. So I went to a broadcasting school and I started working at a radio station in their promotions department, thinking, okay, I'll work my way up, like then I'll get a job, blah, 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 I'll do on air. And I worked with a radio station for about a year or so in their promotions. And I kind of just felt like, like nothing is really happening right now. I need to kind of try something new. So I got this internship at a recording studio in downtown Cleveland. And I knew that music and recording was a little, over my head, but I was like, okay, let's go with that and just see what happens after this. So I got that internship. They ended up hiring me for their social media. And that was just one of those things that was kind of laughable, because I didn't even have a Facebook account at the time. And they're like, well, we really like your work ethic. Like they really liked me. So that was great. That's how I got into social media. So I was managing accounts for the recording studio, and they also had a record label there. It was a startup, so I was like working with bands and stuff like that. So that's how I got in there. Well, what happened is, as this record label was a startup, it failed because there was mismanagement of money and a whole lot of stuff going on there. So I ended up losing my job. And at this point I was really sad about it, because I really liked, doing like the social media and all that stuff. And I thought it was really fun. So just to save myself, when I lost my job, because it came out of nowhere, I grabbed a job. I became an executive assistant for this guy, high power hedge fund guy. And so I started doing that job, and that's when I knew I needed some sort of creative thing. So while I did this job, that's when the idea for the blog came along. And I remember I used to go, my one job was to basically write him a specialized newsletter every day, like what was happening in the world and that would interest him. So I took all of the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, I scanned the papers and basically rewrote the most interesting stories that would pertain to him. So that was my one job. And I thought that was so boring. So when I was done with my newsletter for him, I would just write at my desk and would make like, I drew out the blog and like what I wanted it to look like, and just kind of started, making a plan for Horses and Heels. So that's where that all started and where that came from.
Wow. And it's kind of funny how our corporate careers can kind of set us up for our creative endeavors and actually, give us some of the skills that we need in order to, run these womanpreneur businesses of our own. And it's so interesting hearing your start. Now, the name Horses and Heels, I've always thought was such a great name and so perfectly sums up what you do on your blog and what you share and what you talk about. Did you have a dream about that? Did that come out of anywhere? Did you pair things together in order to come up with that name? I'm so curious where that name came from.
It was a contender there were a couple names that were contenders when I was thinking of, the blog, because I was like, oh, it's going to be equestrian, but like, it's going to be fashion forward. So I was like, it needs something that shows that it's fashionable and fun. So I know there were like 3 names that I thought of. And I took a poll with like friends, and the other name that was in the running was Stilettos and Spurs, which I'm glad I didn't go with, because I think more people would have they would misspell stiletto, or, I think there would have been issues with that, but I thought that was cute, and I don't remember who came up with Horses and Heels, if it was me or if my sister said it, you know what I mean? Because I think we're like, oh, Stilettos and Spurs, like that's super cute. And then we're like, but Horses and Heels is cute too. And then I know that there was probably another name, that I'm not thinking of, but those were like the 2 that were like narrowed down to be the finalists. And then I remember like asking my friends, I'm like, what do you think I should call my blog? And everyone's like, oh, we like Horses and Heels better. So
yeah. And it totally rolls off your tongue too. I mean, it's just so perfect. I think it's just such a great name. Thank you for sharing that with us. I was always really curious about that, because I mean, I've loved following you for, even before I ever wrote my books or even got involved in the equestrian world myself. I was always a horse girl or a horseback rider, but never, involved in the creative avenue. So I always have been a big fan of yours. And it's like, it's a dream come true for me actually to be talking to you today, because I always looked up to you and thought that what you were doing was so cool. So, that being said, did you ever expect to be able to work full time and be able to support yourself through your blogging and your creative endeavors? It's like a dream job. Like,
yeah, I mean, I think I always hoped, you know what I mean? And it's been, obviously it's been very challenging, because I think when I first started out, like living in Ohio, like cost of living is not very high there. So I've gone from Ohio to, there was a point when I was able to quit my job, and I was making money with the blog. And shortly after that, that's when my husband and I ended up moving to New York. And then I was like, oh my gosh, this is what real rent like costs. And then, here in Los Angeles, where it's also very, very expensive. So it's been a challenge always, because I've said, like, I feel like I keep getting raises, but those raises get taken away from me by like rent or, just cost of living in an expensive area. But it is nice that I get to be able to, I wake up every day and I get to pick when I work. Sometimes I'll go for a morning ride. Sometimes I go for an afternoon ride. Sometimes I go for an evening ride. Sometimes I start work at noon. Sometimes I work until 10 p.m. You know what I mean? Sometimes I work at 6 a.m. The flexibility is amazing. And then actually I was listening to a podcast recently with someone I look up to, and they talk about work-life balance. Well, if you work for yourself, like work-life balance is just something that people talk about. And it sounds like a really nice idea. But it's more like work-life integration. It's how you integrate your daily work into your life. And, it's not always balanced at all, because, I do more than an 8-hour day on most days. And I'm okay with that though,
because you love the work. I mean, it's like, that's what makes the difference. It's like, I think as a small business owner and living your dream job, you work more than you would at a traditional job, but I think you're creating better, you're creating something better for the world because you're all in, right? And I love that analogy of work-life integration, because it is true. You insert things like a load of laundry here, back to the dust, like go out and be with the horses, back to the dust. And I that's a really great analogy. So I really wanted to ask you about this too. I'm really interested because you are considered an equestrian influencer. And I know, like I said earlier, I've been a fan of Horses and Heels and now Stable Style for as long as I can remember. And, I've always been inspired by your recommendations. In fact, is it ASOS? Is that how you say it? Or do you pronounce it differently?
I think yeah. I don't actually know because I've never heard anyone say it before.
Okay. Oh, I'm assuming it's ASOS, but you just did a post featuring a bunch of equestrian themed clothing that I love from this particular brand. I actually went on and I bought like 3 different outfits to wear to the Equus Film Festival in December based on your recommendations.
Take pictures.
Yeah, I will for sure. And thank you for doing that, because, it's like, I look to you to find these things because I don't have time to go like looking who's got horse clothes, and I like that because it matches up with my brand, and I go to these horsey events, and because of you, I always have like something cool to wear. So, I wanted to ask you, what does being an equestrian influencer mean to you? And how would you define being an equestrian influencer? Like, how does someone reach that status?
That's a tough question, because I feel like, when I started, it was just everyone was a blogger, and now you have bloggers and you have influencers, and they're 2 totally different things. There are people who just have their Instagram accounts and they have no blog. To me, I guess, and it's funny because like, I don't really consider myself to be an influencer. I'm just like, oh, I'm just a horse girl who has a blog. you know, But I think what it is, or how you get to that point, I guess you could say, is you just post you be you, first of all. Like, you don't try and be anybody else, because, you'll see that where some people, you can tell they're maybe just like trying, just be yourself. And I think if you share or talk about things that you like and that you love, then people will, it's exactly what you said. You were looking for those horse print things, and to take that into like, to dive into it a little bit more. I'm constantly going on H&M, Target, I'm trying to think of another one, Forever 21, Pottery Barn. Like, I'm constantly looking for horse fashion and home things that I can share on my blog, because whenever it's mainstream, it always, one, I love it, and other people love it too. So then to go into, a little bit of like the money making aspect is usually I'm posting an affiliate link and I'm going to make a commission off of that. So, to me, I guess influencing is getting people to either like buy your, share your tastes and they're buying it from you, or if you're not selling a product and say you're just like a horse trainer, or you're an equine influencer who has, this amazing horse or something, people are taking, a little bit of your training methods, or, and they're applying them at home. So I think being an influencer is when you see something online and then the action is you're trying it by either buying or taking someone's advice.
That's a great way to sum it up. And, in fact, I purchased thing from H&M because of you, and actually have some throw pillows on my couch from one of your throw pillow posts. Thank you for curating all this stuff, because, like I said, like, you're always looking for it, and then you share it with us, and we love horses, and anything horse inspired is such, it's so awesome that you share it in the space for us. So how does it make you feel to be able to impact our community with the stories on your blog and your product reviews and equestrian fashion recommendations? Like, how does it make you feel to hear that your content's having an impact on me and I'm purchasing based on your recommendations? That has to feel awesome.
Yeah. it's a great feeling. I think I'm very, just kind of, like humble about it and reserved because, sometimes like, my husband will be like, oh, you're a cool horse girl. He'll be like giving me a compliment. And I'm like, oh, I'm just, like blah, blah, blah. I think I don't sell myself, or think of myself in that way. I'm just like, oh, I'm just doing what I like. But no, it's a great feeling to just know that other people think it's really cool.
Yeah, and I was going to say that's why I think Horses and Heels and Stable Style resonates, is because you are authentic and you are just being you and sharing what you like, and it totally shows through in the content you create and the shares that you make. Like, you're sharing things that you would have in your home, or barns that you would love to own, or clothes that you would also wear. I mean, you actually take pictures and model some of the items that you recommend. So it is authentic, and you're right. People can tell, and we can tell with you that it's from the heart.
Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. And I think it's important to be modest, or be, humble about those things too. And, I think that's a great lesson for other people to hear from you, is that, it's like, you may have invented something, but to be, authentic and humble about it is a very important characteristic. Which leads me into working with equestrian brands. I'm curious about this too. How do you decide which brands to work with? Because I know that you're selective about your choices, like, and it must go back to what you would like and authenticity, but you do work with a lot of brands. How do you start those partnerships, and how do you decide who you want to work with? Because I'm sure you are contacted constantly.
You know, sometimes I just think it's like what you said. I have to like them. Or it'd have to be something that I would either buy on my own, or I would actually, wear or have, or, like you said, my house is very small. So like when I post like home decor stuff, I'm like, oh, I want that. I'm like, I have no room for it. You know what I mean? Like, if I had room for it, like I would have it, like that sort of thing. Or if my closet had unlimited, I would have it. Or if I had unlimited funds, I would have it. Like, that's the way that I think about it. And when it comes to the brands, I try and promote people that I like also as a brand. You can tell a lot, or at least I think I'm pretty perceptive, judging by an email from someone, if they're being authentic, or if it's a copy and paste email, because if it's like, hey, sir, or like, hey there, if someone says, hey there, in the start of an email, I might write back to them, but chances are, I won't. And it used to be when I started out, I would try and write back to every single email.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's gotten to be a point where I've realized that I don't need to feel bad if I don't respond to every single email, because if they put that little thought into like a copy paste, they don't really care about me or really want to work with me. So it's okay if I don't write back to them. And same thing with brands. I think that the timing has to be right. There are a couple brands that I'm really excited to be working with. One is a breech. Well, it's a riding jean, and I'm really excited because it's a combination between riding jeans and breeches. And if you know me, I wear breeches with my cowboy boots sometimes, and so I feel like I am that person, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm super excited to be like, they're sending me a couple pair of their riding jeans, and we're doing some campaigns, on Stable Style and some banner advertising. And so that's like a client that, to me, they're the perfect client, because we are, I'm showing off their product, and we're working on, a couple different levels of marketing, and I love it. So it's, extremely authentic. There's a friend I have in New York City who started a cowboy boot line, and I'll be working with her on some boot stuff. And, I'm very excited to get her boots. So I think that just when you're working with a brand, like, you have to get really excited, because what I've realized is, like, say if someone is sending me a product or something, if it arrives and you're just like, like, if you don't have that excitement, promoting it and doing that like work behind, like putting it out there, is
Mm-hmm.
going to be a lot harder.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that those are kind of the things, like it really has to excite me, or I have to really want to share it, because if I don't want to share it, then chances are my readers they're going to be able to know, or it's just going to come across that like, she's sort of excited, but not really.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm excited to learn more about those writing genes. That sounds perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And then something else that I really love that you do on both Horses and Heels and Stable Style is that you feature, like you support horse book authors and you make book recommendations. What do you look for in a book to recommend? And then what kind of books do you feature?
So, okay. In terms of what kind of books I feature, I mean, all horsey books. In terms of like what I'm looking for, they say not to judge a book by a cover, but I do. Especially if it's like a coffee table book or something, the imagery has to be really beautiful, or it has to draw you in. Cause obviously I'm an Amazon affiliate. So I recommend books on Amazon all the time. And, I do get commission when people buy those books. One thing that I don't know if people ever really talk about, but the benefit of being an affiliate is obviously the first thing is you are getting a commission. But the second thing is you're actually seeing what people want to buy. So you're seeing, oh, this book sold this many times, or this book, you know what I mean? So you're learning about your audience, or you're learning about what people are shopping for. So I've kind of learned that people are really into coffee table books. Those sell really well. In terms of horse books and horse novels, I've had a conversation with my other friend who Susan, like we've talked about books, and there aren't enough horse books out there, because I feel like I'm coming to a point where in terms of recommendations, like I know most of the books out there. So, as you're an author, keep writing, because I even, when I'll tag your book or something, on Instagram, for example, or something, or in like a story or whatever, people will DM me and be like, what's that book about? I'm looking for another like book recommendation. And then I'll like tell them. So books are just, I wish I had more time to read, because I don't read as much as I should. But I love books. I love horse books, and a lot of people do too. So that's why I do the book recommendations, because I think it's fun. And I love putting those lists together. So, I'll do like an all Western, or there's usually some sort of theme that ties the books together.
Mm-hmm. And thank you so much for supporting horsebook authors. It's so awesome to have you in our corner. And thank you for always supporting my books. I really appreciate you. Actually, when you featured Chopin Promise, the third book in my series for your autumn recommended reads, I instantly saw a lift in sales. So thank you for doing that, and for liking the books. And I know you only share things that you authentically like. So I appreciate your support. That's actually what brought us together. This is the first time Raquel and I are actually talking to each other, although we've had kind of a working relationship for a few years now. This is the first time like seeing and talking to each other. And I reached out to her all nervous, when I was a brand new author, and I was like, would you be interested in reading my book? And you were so kind and lovely, and you're like, of course, I'd love to read your book. And I sent it to you, and then we developed this really beautiful internet friendship. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, that's great. And then one thing that I will side note is I do get a lot of emails like yours now too, where people do offer to send me books. And a lot of times I do just decline, because I say like, well, I don't have to, I would love to have your book, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to read it right now. But I do flag everyone's emails, because I get a lot of them. People will email me about their book, and I'll say, hey, like, I'm going to keep your information, so the next time I do a roundup, like, you can be considered.
And that's really great to point out. I do understand how requests to read books can really pile up. I think I have like a pile on my nightstand of books that I'm behind in reading. And I love to read. I think I've read, like 60 books this year, but I'm still behind. And there's so many horsebook authors that I promised I'd read and review their books, and I will. Just takes a while when you're a busy cowgirl.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally get that. So let's not flood Raquel with with requests to read our books. Let's just know that she supports us and she's keeping an eye on what we're doing. And I'm hoping through this podcast too to inspire other authors or aspiring authors that are interested in writing horse books to like get in the game and bring us some new material. Because I don't know, I feel like sometimes I've read them all too. We need more fiction. We need more fiction with horses.
We do. I 100% agree.
Yeah, well, that's why I wrote my books, because I wrote the book I wanted to read because I couldn't find it, or I had read everything already. So
exactly.
I love that you pointed that out. I wanted to talk a little bit too. I mean, I think I sent you a lot of questions, so thank you for being so kind to answer all these, because I was just so excited to talk to you. But not only have stories been written about you and Fira and your life in the city and everything that you've been doing in very popular horse magazines, but you also freelance. You write for equestrian magazines, which is another thing to add to your pile of things to do, which is very obvious why you don't have enough time. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you got into freelance work for horse publications and which publications you've written for? I know people are going to recognize them.
Yeah. So right now, or at least this year, I've done a lot of work for Horse Illustrated and the Paint Horse Journal and Chrome Magazine, which is their members only publication. I've done stuff in the past for Cowgirl Magazine. I've done a little bit for Western and English Today. I've done a couple articles here and there for, one magazine, they're no longer in existence anymore. I was featured in Horse and Style this summer, which was really exciting. So, the magazine thing, that's always been really fun for me. And I guess to say how I got into it was by being a blogger, because in no means am I a professional writer or, trained to do it, or nor did I ever really think of myself as a writer when I started blogging. I was like, I'm slapping up photos, adding a little bit of text. I've come a long way as a writer, and it's something that I actually really enjoy. When I think maybe it was 2 or 3 years ago was when Rachel from Chrome Magazine, she had interviewed me for a story that she was writing. And then I remember it might be 3 years ago, she had sent me an email about doing an article for them, writing for them. And I was just like, I was so excited to get that email. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, I'm not a writer, but they're asking me to write for their magazine. So I was very lucky in the sense that I didn't have to pitch something. That kind of fell into my lap. So I did the article. I obviously did a good enough job because, they asked me to do some more. And then, every year they have, what's called pitch season, and they'll ask you for your pitches. So I've already pitched and been assigned my 2020 writing assignments. And I'm actually really excited because I have a pretty big workload coming up for the Paint Horse Journal and for Chrome. And I'm really excited. They're giving me some articles that are kind of outside of, I usually do like the really fashion, like fun stuff, but they're giving me a little more technical stuff because I had done an article for them this summer, and they were actually really surprised because they're like, usually our technical writers and our, it's 2 different styles basically. And they were surprised that I was able to pull it off. And I was too. So they gave me some more stuff. So I'm actually really excited about that. And it's just kind of what I tell people, it's horses over here all day, every day. And it's fun.
That's great. So your freelance career kind of started by you being so good, people couldn't ignore you and they started coming to you, which is really great. And that makes life a little easier when people are drawn to you and come to you and ask you to participate. So the technical article, I'm curious, what was the technical article about, so I can go and look for it? Because
the funny story about that is it didn't get published this year. So it might be getting published 2020. But you'll love the subject. It's about spooking.
Oh, perfect. Great subject.
Yeah, I'm very versed about spooking, and I, interviewed a couple of really great trainers, and it was a good article to write. And it had to get bumped because of another story that was time sensitive, but they were like, this is kind of evergreen, so we're going to push it. So that's okay. But I do hope that it comes out this year, and I'll let you know.
Yeah, I'll be looking for that. And that happens all the time for people that aren't aware. That happens all the time in the publishing industry, like something that's more timely may move something back or even forward based on, the content. So that's normal. And I will look forward to that. And, I'm always excited every time I open a magazine and I see your name at the top. I'm like, oh, I know her. That's so cool.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing that I wanted to say too, just based on your comments, is that, you start in one place when you take on, a creative career, your own business or your own blog or what have you, and you grow. Like through this process, you grow and you start expanding what you do. And like, look at now, you're freelancing for equestrian publications and writing technical articles, and then kind of stepping outside of the fashion world and the fun pieces. And that's exciting because you're evolving and you're constantly learning. That's really cool. So this leads us to, this is the Equestrian Author Spotlight. So I'm sure people know this, but I want to kind of put a spotlight on it that, you've written a book. So your blog and your equestrian writing experience, in equestrian publications leads us to your book, From Passion to Profit, a step-by-step guide to niche blogging. Tell us about your book.
So it's basically kind of a beginner's guide to starting a blog and kind of everything that you need to do to, one, start the blog, two, like once you have it, coming up with content, setting a schedule, and I talk about social media and the importance of it, the power of Pinterest, like just basically, and then I talk about, affiliate networks. Kind of, it basically goes into an intro on basically all of those subjects. So yeah, that was a goal that I had set for myself, and I'm happy that, it's out there.
You have a book, baby. Congratulations.
Yes.
And I mean, obviously people that are interested in this equestrian space, like you are the perfect go-to person for something like this, and how to create a blog in this niche. I hate to call it that because I feel like everybody loves horses, but it is, it's a very, what am I trying to say? It's a very, like perfect.
It's select.
Yeah. It's very select. Thank you. I often stumble sometimes when I'm trying to find the right words to describe these things. What's really cool though, is you also offer the book bundled with personal coaching packages. Would you talk to us a little bit about your coaching offer and how people can work with you one-on-one?
Yeah, so that's something I offer, well, on my blog, and then in my newsletter, it's there too. But I've done not a lot of them, and I don't promote it as much as I should. You're a loyal fan and follower, so you're in the know. But I've done, and I actually did one probably within a month ago for someone who's starting a blog, and I'm actually really excited to see where she goes with it and what she does. But the nice thing about the coaching and what I tell people is you can ask me anything on the phone. And I mean, anything. And I will give you, a straight and honest answer. And that's just one of those things where I've kind of learned over the years just by doing everything that I've done. And, what led me to write the ebook and the coaching sessions is just, you learn that you can Google your way through a lot and you can get a lot of good answers, but you only really get the best answers if you pay for them. And I don't mean to say that in like people will help you and people will give you really good advice and they're intending to give you that good advice. But to have like that hour where you're just bouncing back and forth, like it's a very intense conversation. You know what I mean? I mean, it is what you some people will come and they have like their list of questions of everything. And then some people, you can tell they were not very prepared and they were just like, they're thinking of questions on the fly. I mean, that's fine too. And personally, I've benefited from a couple of ebooks that I've bought. And then I've also bought some where I was very disappointed because I was just like, oh, I already know that, like, I've bought some courses and I've just felt let down. And that's the thing. Anybody can write their own ebook or their own course. So if you do buy one, do your research and make sure, or ask the person questions ahead of time to make sure that you will be learning from it. But that's the reason I wanted to do the coaching session, because I thought the book was cool and the book was good. But if you want to go really dive in basically beyond that, the coaching is just kind of a way to dig in a lot deeper. And I always tell everyone, like, I recommend reading the book first and then do the coaching. That's so that you have a chance to digest.
Yeah, that's really smart because you lay it all out in the book, but then, there's follow-on questions. And I think you are totally correct when you say, the best advice comes from, advice that you pay for and trusted resource. It's really important to have someone in your corner when you're building a business or you want to step into this world. And, some of the most successful, or most of the most successful people in the world have their own coaches. Like, this is not, like a surprise thing. Like business CEOs have coaches. Like we all need coaches and have coaches. And I think it's a wonderful thing that you're doing, is offering that service for people to learn from one of the very best in the equestrian lifestyle side of things.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that.
No, that's great. So I will link to where you can find Raquel's book in the show notes, and I'll also link to your coaching packages as well, so people can take a look at those and see if they work for them. But you can also buy the book without the coaching packages, but there is the option to do both, or you can just do coaching, right? So you can buy the book, you can buy the book and coaching, or you can just do coaching. So there's a lot of opportunity to connect with you around what you do.
Yes.
So very cool. So I already, in one of the questions I sent over before we started the interview, I asked you, do you have a special time to write, or how's your day structured? And what I love is you shared that you have a flexible schedule. Like I imagine you just sort of run off of a to-do list, but then take care of other things along the way. So, do you have a structure, or do you just kind of do what needs to be done?
Every day is different because my husband also works from home on most days. And he's in the music industry. So he works long days as well. And him and I don't have as much time to hang out, So for example, this morning, him and I just hung out. We went and got breakfast this morning and went for a walk. And then, I did this. And I also worked a couple hours in the morning while he was still sleeping. So I try and do my most important tasks in the morning. And then after this, I'm going riding. And then I'm going to start working more through my day, but then I'll probably work until 8 or 9. Mm-hmm. So, every day is different, and I keep a lot of lists and stuff like that. I just feel like I try and do my most important tasks, in the morning. And then it's like, I can maybe treat myself with a ride, or if I still need to work, I'll keep going. Mm-hmm. Or, like you mentioned, laundry or stuff like that. Like I'll be doing, I'm going to take an hour break, but I'm cleaning the house for that next hour. Like sometimes we just need computer breaks. Mm-hmm. So, there's no such thing as an identical day around here. I have my to-do list, and I just take it day by day or week by week based on like my husband's schedule and, things that I have going on, appointments or phone calls or whatever.
And I love that you said that you do the most important thing first. I think that's great. And often the most important thing that you need to do is like your biggest I don't want to thing. I know that's like how it is for me also. Yeah. So I think that that's great advice. Like just get that done, get that out of the way. And I also want to say thank you for giving me the gift of your time and giving me such a large chunk of your time today to do this interview. I really appreciate it because I know you are very busy.
Of course.
And then, we're getting, towards the end here, so we can start to wind down. But I wanted to ask you, was there one thing that you wish you had known when you started your blogging adventure?
The one thing that I do tell people when I quit my job, I wish that, and maybe this is good advice for anybody who's quitting their job, but I wish I would have stayed working a little bit longer, because here's the thing. My boss basically offered to give me any salary that I wanted and let me like have more control of my hours, because he didn't want to let me go. And
Wow. That's a dream.
no, I know. And I was like, no, because I was done. It was a very stressful job though. I mean, I used to start crying like every Sunday afternoon because I had so much anxiety about like going into work. So like when I say it was stressful, it was very stressful. And at that point I felt that the money wasn't worth it. But looking back, I was like, oh, for another 3 months, I should have just held it together and asked for that bigger raise, and just,
I think,
that's a regret of mine, I guess. I mean, it's not really a big regret, but I'm just saying, like, if you're getting ready to quit a job, prepare for them to say, okay, but also prepare for them to say no. And then that's where you make a little more money and you hang in there a little bit longer.
and you also have a little bit of power to kind of maybe negotiate your schedule, right? It sounded like you probably would have been able to create a little more freedom for yourself. So maybe there wouldn't have been as much anxiety, but I know that feeling. I know how it feels to go to a job that you just dread and it's not healthy. So, so it's like, you got to weigh those things, right, when you make decisions like that. But yeah, when you are good at your job and you are getting ready to leave, there's often that opportunity where they'll come back to you and they'll say, please stay. What do you want? What it'll take? And then maybe you can redesign your schedule so it works better for you. Or maybe there's that boost in salary where you can put a little more away to support you when you actually do walk out the door. So that's really great advice.
Yeah.
Uh, so I wanted to ask you, what is the hardest thing about being considered an equestrian influencer? I know, like you say, you don't really think of yourself that way, but I see you as this great, shiny, like, celebrity. So, what's the hardest part about kind of being in that role?
Honestly, it's time management. At least for me, in terms of working, it's always trying to manage my time and wanting to do more and not being able to do it. I have all these ideas all the time that are like popping off in my head. And I'm like, oh, I should do this. I should make this. Like, I want to do that. And then, I only get to do one or two of those things. So I think that that's kind of the thing that, always makes me a little bit sad, I guess you could say, is I can't execute all of my ideas, just because it's a time thing always that I'm battling with. And I think you just have to learn to be okay with, you can only do so much. So yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I always wish there was, more hours in the day to get things done. I can totally feel that. And then, on the flip side of that, what is the best thing about, I know you've mentioned a lot of really good things about it, but like, what's the best thing for you about being in the influencer position?
I think just the friendships that I've made, especially out here in LA, there are so many horse girls or Southern California like horse people that I've never would have met them if it weren't for my Instagram account or my blog. So people have like, they've reached out to me and we've set up like coffee dates. And I mean, almost every girl that I go riding with, we met because of Instagram. So I don't think I would have these friendships. And that's kind of amazing because, like us horse girls, like we always find each other,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm friends with English people and I probably wouldn't have run into them at their show. You know what I mean? So I think the best part is just like the connecting, and even with beyond the friendships, like the brands and stuff, like you make friends with, brand reps or different people. And I think you're always just learning from other people. Like that's what I really like. I ride with people from different disciplines, and I've also learned there are so many different types of horse owners. I mean, I've always known this in Ohio, but like here in LA, you see it. Like you see so many different types of horse owners, and you know, Some of them I really relate to. Some of them you're just like, oh no, I can't believe I just witnessed that. But yeah, I think that's the best thing, at least for me with like Instagram, is just meeting like horse girls and like planning rides and stuff like that. That's kind of, I think, a highlight.
And I couldn't agree more. I mean, the friends that you end up making through connections and just doing this sort of work are really cool. And I think that that's awesome that you're open to meeting up and making new friends, horsey friends in the LA area. I think that's so cool. If you follow, I'll make sure to link to all your social media channels in the show notes, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But follow Horses and Heels or Stable Style on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, all the places that she is, because it's so fun to watch her adventures with her horsey girlfriends as they go to all these really unique, cool places in California and take pictures and kind of document their rides along the way. I think that's so neat.
It's fun.
Yeah. And then two more questions. Okay. So one, what might a fan of yours be surprised to learn about you?
Probably that I'm shy and quiet and reserved. I don't know if it comes off in my Instagram or not, but one of the reasons I started blogging is because I thought I could just hide behind a computer screen. And then Instagram happened and everyone wanted to, see your face. And I was just like, well, that's terrifying. So yeah, I think it's just that like, I'm actually just a pretty quiet person.
And that's sweet and lovely. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with being a little more reserved and shy. And I never ever would have known that. When I learned that about you, I was really surprised. So you do a very good job overcoming that, I guess. Is that the right way to say that?
Yeah.
That's great. And then last question, what are you curious about right now? What's next? Where are you going? What are you doing? Can be anything.
Oh gosh, that's such a loaded question.
Could be horsey, could be bloggy.
I mean, right now there are not a lot. There are two big projects, and you probably know this per our email conversations, but there are two big projects that I've wanted to get off the ground and I just haven't been able to. It's my own time management, just not making it a priority. But there's something that I really want to do for Stable Style that would be a huge project. And I'm not even going to say the word out here, because if I do tell others, I'm going to have to actually make it happen. And I think I will eventually. But it's just one of those huge, huge undertakings. And I think another thing that I'm excited about is just 2020 is going to be a year for a lot more adventures with Fira and I, and actually leaving like the rancho, which obviously we love it here. So many places to ride, but we're going to start going to shows and stuff like that. So I'm definitely really excited about that.
That's great. And I'll be rooting for you from Arizona. I can't wait to see you compete and what 2020 is going to hold for you. And I believe you'll get that thing with Stable Style off the ground for sure. You anything you set your mind to, I know that you can do and will do. So I wanted to ask you where readers readers and listeners can find your blog and your books and more about you and join your adventures.
So horsesandheels.com or at horsesandheels with the _ on Instagram. And then Stable Style is stablestyle.net, and it's at Stable Style on Instagram. And those are probably, obviously, both of the blogs have my, information on there, and Instagram is, I'm very active. So send me a DM or, comment on a post and you'll probably get a response pretty quickly. So
fantastic. And I will include all the links to your social media channels beyond Instagram. Well, Instagram will be there, but like your other ones there too for people so they can follow you. And I will say your Instagram stories are so fun. I really enjoy watching them, and as Fira, a lot of it is, you riding Fira and her checking out new things like a garbage can or, a bag or a garbage truck, or I always giggle watching your adventures. So I encourage everyone to follow Stable Style on horses and heels. And Raquel, I just wanted to say, I'm so happy to finally talk to you for the first time in person, and you are as lovely as I thought you would be. And I just want to say thank you for taking the time to talk with me and to share, a little bit about your journey becoming this very successful equestrian influencer. So thank you for the gift of your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for, having me. It was fun.
Good. Well, let's do it again in the future as new things develop. Can't wait to have you back on.
Definitely.
Okay. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for joining us this week on the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast. I hope you enjoy these Q&A sessions with wonderful equine authors who love all things horses and riding, just like me. Visit my website, carlykadecreative.com, where you can read the show notes, and make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you so much for your support. Want a free guide to secrets of horsebook authors? Gallop over to carlykadecreative.com/wisdom to have author advice delivered instantly to your inbox. If you are an author who writes about horses and would like to be spotlighted, please let me know. Visit my contact page at carlykadecreative.com to fill out a request. I'd be happy to have you on the show too. Thank you for tuning in to the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast. See you next time. I'm your host, Carly Kade. Creative writing makes my spurs jingle.